personally don't feel like it's a good decision or the right thing to do concerning the whole situation, but that's just my point of view, and it's not my life. And
hey everyone, I'm a little bit behind on the Welcome to Plathville recap videos, so you're going to get a video with 2 episodes today. It's for episodes 10 and 11 of season 5, but let's go ahead and get started. Alright, the first episode that I'm going to talk about is season 5 episode 10, I Am Not Bound to Please. The show starts out with Ethan driving back to Georgia to get his cars. This is the road trip that is causing so many problems with Ethan and Olivia. But even though things aren't great with Olivia, Ethan is really excited to see his dad, the little sisters, and Isaac. Now, even though he's excited to visit, it's not like everything is good between them. He says what he's doing is going to visit them, spend time with them, but he's going to stay away from the more sensitive stuff and just go there and enjoy visiting his family. He says he would actually like to talk to Mariah, but at this point he's still blocked, so he can't reach out to her. But if she were to come and see him, he would like to talk to her and work things out. During this part of the episode, Ethan explains that Olivia is upset with him right now because he made plans without her. He didn't discuss this with her. She had wanted him to wait, but he just went for it. I'm going to be honest with you guys, in their relationship, should they be communicating with each other? Yes. But what if I went ahead and made those plans without talking to Olivia? Yes, I would have done that as well, because that she was not going to be okay with this. And I think he just really wants it. And I honestly think Ethan should get to spend time with his family. If Olivia is being honest about the possibility that she would one day like to maybe have some sort of friendly relationship with his siblings, that has to start somewhere, and I know he has that in his head. The longer it goes on that they don't talk, the harder it's going to be to fix things. I think a road trip is a great idea to sort of work things out with Micah. So I'm all about this. I would have probably done it too. Is it the right thing to do in their marriage? Probably not. But I would have done it. You guys let me know. What do you think about that? Should have you waited and talked to Olivia? When Ethan does finally arrive at the Plath house, the little sisters are so excited to see him. They run to the door. Now, Barry is still working, so it's Micah, Isaac, and the 3 little girls that are there to greet him, and they're just so happy he's there. He hasn't came over for a friendly visit in ages, so they're just excited to see him, and they definitely haven't had Micah and Ethan over in a long time. So they're just having a great time together. They decide to pull out some guitars and play some music that they used to play. And it's just they're all happy to be there. And Ethan looks really happy to be there. And that is a good change, right? I think it's nice to see him look happy. It is sad that that can't be with Olivia, but that's just not where they're at this point. The show switches over to Olivia then and her friend Maya, and they are going out to get some lunch. And I have to tell you guys something. This is probably one of my favorite episodes for Olivia. I feel like it's good to actually listen to her talk in a situation where she's calm. She doesn't feel like she's being triggered by anything. She's not emotional. We just see her talking about her life and being herself with someone. And her friend Maya actually grew up in the Christian faith, grew up very conservative, so she understands what Olivia feels like, and she understands what she's going through when it comes to her feelings about marriage. I just really liked Maya, and I thought her and Olivia together seemed to have good conversation. I hope we see a little bit more of her on the show and a little bit more of Olivia like this. Together they sit and talk about how they grew up and how they were taught that your marriage vows were the most important thing, even more important than your personal happiness and well-being. And it felt like you may have to sacrifice those things to stay married. This conversation also leads to them talking about having children, and Olivia shares something that is really, really sad. I want you to listen to what she says here.
No, he wants kids, but not with me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you heard that right. Olivia says that Ethan doesn't want to have children with her because he doesn't want her to influence his kids. Their beliefs are just too different now, and he doesn't want his kids raised with the beliefs that Olivia has now. So basically who she is That's not who she was when they got married, and he does not like this change. This isn't what he wants in his children's lives, but he does love her, and he tells her that. And you know what, you guys, that is just a huge deal breaker. The fact that you've reached a point where you're married and you look at that person and say, I want to have kids, but not with you because the way you are now, I don't like you now. That's kind of what he's saying. But I genuinely think he loves her. I do think he loves Olivia, and I do think they've both changed some. I think it's been too much, but I'm sure that is very, very sad for Olivia to hear. At one point during a confessional, Olivia actually says, I'm just over it. And I think they both are. If you guys were to go back just this season and watch the earlier episodes, and specifically the ones when they first arrived in Minnesota, these two were happy. They seemed to be in such a good place. Remember how they talked about how they didn't want to live with siblings again, and it was so nice to be alone. That is not the couple we're seeing here. I think we're seeing two people that have given up on their marriage. They just aren't fully ready to call it quits yet. They both look very sad. And seeing Ethan visit his family and look happy makes you realize how different he is, with her, and then having happy experiences. And I'm sure it's the exact same with Olivia. She travels for her job. I wonder when she is away if she is just so much happier. After that, we switch back over to the Plath house, and we see that Barry is finished working and he is ready to spend time with Ethan. And you know what? Ethan hasn't seen his dad and just sat down and spent time with him in quite a while, so they have a lot of catching up to do. During a confessional, Barry says that he's actually open to working on having a friendly relationship with Olivia once things are better with Ethan. So Barry's open to trying to make this better. And both Barry and Ethan just really seem happy to see each other. Ethan says that his dad quickly forgives and that his dad wants relationships with his kids. And he feels like that says a lot about who his dad is as a person. So I just think Ethan is at a point where his marriage isn't good. His relationship with his family isn't good. He needs something good in his life. One of those relationships needs to be repaired. And really, I think it's the same for Olivia. But I think their marriage is done. And so now Ethan is going to his family. I hope Olivia is able to get the same thing. I think her relationship with Lydia Grace improving is going to help her do better, if this marriage dissolves. During the talk, Barry brings up that he is going to be going to LA to visit Micah, and Isaac is going to be coming as well. And he says, you know what? The only thing missing is you. So he tells Ethan, you need to come to LA and spend time visiting Micah with us. Ethan is totally into it, but then he says he's worried about how that will go with Olivia. He says he may need to stay home and work on his marriage. Now, he doesn't say that to Barry because he is trying to stay away from talking about Olivia to Barry. He says that during a confessional. Yeah, I'm going to put a clip in here so that you guys can hear it.
On me and Olivia and try to see if there's anything we can do there. And I know that going would only aggravate things, but at the same time I want to go to get away.
Honestly, I just think that it is so sad that his marriage involves so many issues with his family that he feels like he can't go and enjoy time with his brothers. I wish Olivia could see that that's not helping her marriage. Keeping her husband away from his family is not going to help them because eventually Ethan is just going to resent her. There needs to be some sort of openness to something. And maybe Olivia does set a limit. Maybe Olivia says, Micah can't come in our apartment. That was one of her things. Maybe she decides that their home has a boundary, but Ethan should be able to go on a trip with his brother and his dad. And that shouldn't play a huge role in their marriage unless they go and try to convince him not to be with her. But I think everyone in this family is kind of treading lightly at this point. Ethan doesn't want to talk about Olivia with his dad. I don't think Barry is going out of his way to ask anything too personal. I think he's going to try to keep it light so that he can maintain a relationship with his kids because we have watched this family fall apart the last few seasons. So he realizes he can lose those relationships. I think he's much more careful. And I think he's a little bit more kind about the way he sees things and less judgmental. I think they've changed, and I think Olivia would be helping her marriage a lot if she was more open to at least letting Ethan have a relationship with his brothers and his dad. The show then switches over to Mariah's apartment. Lydia is visiting. They decided to listen to some of the old songs the family used to sing together. Lydia and Mariah explained during a confessional that the Plath family used to travel, make their own music, do performances. And I have to tell you guys something. It was a little bit refreshing to hear them talk about it. I feel like usually when we hear kids or, teenagers, young adults talk about performing when they were children, it's always negative. It's always like we were forced to do it. It was awful. We didn't want to, or, our parents would kind of trick us into doing it in some way. Like there's always a little bit of resentment and trauma in most of the stories, but Lydia and Mariah both seem to look back on this whole thing very fondly. They seem to feel positive about the relationships that they had with their siblings when they were doing it. So I was impressed. Now, they're sitting there on the couch listening to this music. They're enjoying it, but it does lead to some more serious conversation about the relationships that the siblings have right now. Mariah talks about how she wishes that she could go and fix things with Ethan, but she doesn't even know what to do. Mariah confides in Lydia and says that she thinks she is the one that caused all the changes in the family, like she's the one that started it. I imagine that Mariah does feel a lot of sadness about what she's lost, because think about it, she was homeschooled. So she didn't go out and have, friendships with a lot of other people. She was really isolated with her family. And now here she is, a young adult living on her own, which is a big change. She went from a big family and then living with Ethan and Olivia and Micah and Olivia's brother to living alone, living by herself. And then while she's living on her own, her mom and dad are divorcing. So her home life, her family life isn't the same. And then she has lost the relationship with Olivia and Ethan, and they were so important to her. I think there's some legitimate, there's some stuff going on there for Mariah. A lot of things that are legitimately sad, and I imagine she does feel very alone. I don't think she should blame herself, though. I don't think she needs to blame herself for her parents divorcing. I think that was happening years and years ago. Not the divorce itself, but all the issues leading up to it. So I don't think she needs to blame herself in any way, and Lydia tries to reassure her that it is not her fault. After this, the show goes over to Kim's apartment. It's the first time we're seeing Kim in this episode. Amber is over. Kim is planning on talking to Amber about how she's dating Ken. Kim knows that Amber has probably already heard it from her other siblings, and Amber confirms it. She knows it's true. She knows that it's Ken. And Amber said even though it was hard to get used to, she still supports her mom. Now I want to put in a clip here of Amber talking.
At first, it was sort of hard to get used to the idea of my mom dating another guy, but then I got used to it and I started to appreciate things.
I just feel like Amber seems to be a really mature kid. She says that she loves her mom. She's going to support her mom. Even if she doesn't really like what she's doing, she's still going to support her because she wants her mom happy. And then Kim does something that I thought was nice. She apologized to Amber. She says that a lot of the changes in the family that are, what's happening right now is because of her. Like Kim's saying, I'm the person who caused so many of these changes, and I know it's affecting you. And I want to apologize for the role I've had in all of this. A lot of people, there's a lot of mixed feelings about Kim, and I get it. But I do think it was nice of her to acknowledge what she has done in all of it, because there are so many parents that don't even think of their kids at all. And if they do, they don't care. They don't care to apologize. I appreciate that Kim at least sat down and, put it into words for her daughter that she knows that she was a part of the changes. And it seems sincere. I feel like the conversation when Kim was saying that, it was sincere. Sometimes on these reality shows, we can't tell. But it felt that way to me. You guys can let me know what you thought of that, though. What did you think of that whole thing with Kim and Amber? After this, Ethan and Micah head back out on the road. They're leaving. They're going to be going back to Minnesota with the cars. And Ethan and Micah talk about where Olivia and Ethan are going to live next. They're doing that thing where they're supposed to move every year. So they've been in Tampa, now Minnesota. And we find out that this is just another issue for Ethan and Olivia. Ethan really loves it there. He loves Minnesota. He loves that his family's there. He loves the winters. And Olivia wants to go to California, and he flat out is like, no. So they've agreed on Colorado. That's where they're at right now. But you can tell Ethan is just not into this. This is not the lifestyle that he wants to live. And this is something Olivia really wants to do. So we've got another conflict between the two of them. During a confessional, Ethan says that his values and Olivia's values are no longer aligned. He says that it was the fundamentals of their marriage. It was the foundation of it. It was what made them want to marry each other. And now she's not that person anymore. And you know what? Ethan and Olivia were both so sheltered. They were like being exposed to the world for the first time. Who could have predicted what way either one of them would go? It just seems like Ethan still holds on to some of those values he had, being raised in a very, very conservative household, where Olivia does not feel the same way. That really changes things for the two of them. Ethan says he doesn't know how their marriage will work. We also get to hear how Micah feels about everything that's happened with Olivia. And I really enjoyed hearing his perspective here. Micah explains during a confessional that the kids in the family all loved when Olivia joined the family. They all loved spending time with her. She was so much fun. But then at some point, it felt like things began to shift. And he says now he sees her as being manipulative and controlling. The issue with the music is brought up during this time too while they're driving. And Ethan says to Micah that Olivia gave Mariah all of the info to log into her music accounts before going to Europe. And then when they were in Europe, Mariah, what he feels like happened is Mariah was trying to get into them, couldn't, and then panicked and started making accusations. I think that Ethan is really trying to figure out what makes sense, because he needs to figure out, his wife and his sister, like what went wrong? Because I know he says, and he's adamant during this episode, Olivia and I never withheld money from Mariah. We never would have withheld the music. We never would have done that. Like, that's just didn't happen. So don't accuse us of stealing. And he's very adamant of that. And I do believe him. I don't think they were stealing. I feel like something somewhere went wrong. But according to Ethan, Mariah just panicked when she couldn't get access to the music, and then Mariah and him, or Olivia and him, were in Europe. So that is his theory. And I think it's a brother trying to figure out how to work things out with his sister and, maintain things with his wife. I think he's trying to find the middle ground there. I honestly don't know what happened. I think Ethan's theory might be the most sensible explanation for all of this, but let me know how you guys thought about it. And that is where this episode ends. All right, the second episode we're talking about is episode 11 of season 5. This show starts out in Nashville with Micah and Ethan on their road trip. They are out there. They seem to be having a good time, and they talk about how well Barry is handling the divorce. Both boys agree that Barry is doing great, but they don't feel as good about Kim. Ethan doesn't think Kim should be dating until the divorce is final, which I can completely understand. I see Ethan's point. But Micah, on the other hand, says that Kim grew up without a father, and he believes that his mom is just trying to get attention from men. And this has to do with things from her past, like how she was raised, her dad not being around. So to him, I don't think he sees it as much of an issue that she's dating, and more that she needs to work on her other issues. So they're together and they talk about how the divorce is going to affect their family, and specifically the little girls in the family. And Micah is really concerned about what it will be like for them to grow up in a household with divorced parents.
They're supposed to have two parents who are together. I know it's like a normal thing now these days to have separated parents, but it's not how it's supposed to be.
I understand what Micah is saying, but I also think having two parents in a household that are resenting each other or not wanting to be together affects kids too. So to me, this is just one of those lose-lose situations. Kim could have stayed, but then she wouldn't have been happy when she was there, and in the end, that would have affected the kids as well. So I don't know if there was any way to win this. But Ethan says he has stopped wishing that things would go back to the way that they were before. So he's not at a place anymore where he's wanting his family back to the way they were. He's accepting that things have changed and it's going to have to keep moving forward this way. He knows they just can't go back to the family that they were before the show started. He, at this point, mentions his marriage with Olivia, and he says they aren't in a good place, and he's accepted that as well, too. And then Micah asks if Olivia knows that he's with him. So he wants to know, like, does Olivia know I'm with you? And Ethan says, yeah, she seemed cool with it. But then we find out the truth.
I mean, I didn't say anything to Micah about Olivia's firm decision that Micah can't come by the apartment because I haven't fully decided what I'm going to do.
Ethan goes on and says he doesn't know what he's going to do. He doesn't know if he's going to take Micah over there. Maybe he won't. He really doesn't know. And when he's talking about it, he's smiling. I don't know if you guys caught that, but he's kind of smiling and doing this little like chuckle. I don't think that was a genuine smile because he was happy. I think he actually just doesn't know what he's going to do. And he doesn't want to upset Olivia, but he also doesn't want to ruin this time he has with Micah. And so I think it's actually more like nervous, like a nervous laugh. But he says he doesn't know what he's going to do, but he didn't want to tell Micah because then if he knows Olivia has said, no, you absolutely can't come over, that might change things, you know, as far as this road trip had went. After that, the show goes over to Mariah's apartment. Barry is visiting and Mariah is going to be doing a dance competition. So he's actually in town to watch that. But they have some time in her apartment where they can just sit and talk. And they talk about Mariah's relationship with her siblings. She says she really wants to work things out with Ethan. You know, it's really important to her. And she explains why she feels like it's so important. And I thought this was just one of those things I often forget this when I'm watching the show. So I want to put this clip in here where she talks about why it's important to work things out with her siblings.
Actually lost a sibling, and we know what that's like to be like, I will see them again in heaven, but here on this earth, they're gone.
Even though they've brought up the death of the younger sibling several times in the show, I do forget it when I'm just watching the episodes where they're not bringing up like the past. So I think that's interesting. I think for Mariah already having the loss of her family as she knows it, then, you know, not being with Olivia and Ethan, and then having that, I just think she's someone who probably right now feels really alone. So when she's talking to Barry, she's saying she wants to work it out. She does say that she's not in a place to work on things with Olivia. So she just really wants to work on things with Ethan. Barry encourages her to do it and encourages her to send another text message to him and just keep it simple. Don't try to reach and deal with things in the past. Just, you know, go lightly. So Barry's encouraging her to work it out. The show then jumps over to the dance competition, and you know what? Mariah is just so excited, and most of the family that is there to watch her. And this is the first time Kim and Barry have been around each other since Kim has started dating. So, you know, I'm sure there was a little bit of awkwardness there, but they were able to come together to support Mariah. I don't know a darn thing about ballroom dancing, but she looked beautiful. She looked happy doing it. So I think it's great that she has this hobby that is like a healthy hobby for her. It's something she can do when she is feeling alone. She has something she can go to. But during this part of the show, there is a confessional with Lydia where she talks about Kim starting to date. And she says that, you know, she doesn't think Kim should be dating now, but she supports her mom and she wants her mom happy. So she's going to continue to support her even though she doesn't agree with the decision. And then there's a part where Barry has a confessional and he says he doesn't think Kim should be dating at this point, but it's also her personal life. And now that they're not together, this is just something he needs to stay out of, which I think is a good approach. When you're separated with someone, you don't need to be in their business. So I think Barry is right. It isn't really his business, even though she probably shouldn't be doing it. Now, here's the thing. Kim defends her choice. They have a confessional with Lydia, then Barry, and then Kim. And Kim says exactly what I have been saying all this season when it comes to her dating. Kim feels like she's ready because she was so unhappy for so long. Their marriage as romantic partners sounds to me like it was over years ago. So they've been living as roommates. You know, not officially. They were husband and wife, but I think that's what it felt like for Kim. And so when they divorced, you know, it wasn't so sad for her. It was almost like it was time for it to happen. And now she's ready to date even before the divorce is final, while Barry and the kids are like, whoa, we didn't even know there were issues. So they haven't adjusted yet the way Kim has. And that's kind of what Kim says when she defends herself. She says, you know what, Barry and I have been separated for a year. And I just feel like this is long overdue. I'm going to put in a clip here of her talking about it in case you guys missed it or forgot it.
I feel like for a long time, I've been in a marriage that I haven't been happy, and I'm out of that now.
She finishes that by saying, you know, meeting someone that makes her happy is long overdue. So I feel like my theory has been right. It just was, she was in the marriage with Barry much longer than she should have been. But still, she needs to consider that everyone else needs a little bit more of an adjustment time. We move then back over to Ethan and Micah on the road trip, and Ethan is really trying to figure out how to handle the situation with Olivia not wanting Micah around. It seems like they're getting closer to their home in Minnesota, and he has to figure something out. So finally, Ethan says, you know, did I tell you that Olivia isn't thrilled that you're coming over to the apartment? I bet Micah was like, seriously, we've been driving for hours and hours and you're now telling me this. But Micah stays really calm, and Micah says, no, you didn't tell me that. And then he says he's fine with not seeing her. He says, you know, I don't have to see her. It's okay with me if I don't. Even though Micah's fine with not seeing her, he does have one concern. And so he asks Ethan a question, and I'm going to put in a clip here of what his concern is.
Thing where it's like, if I don't sit down and talk to her, it's going to make it harder to see you again? No?
So Micah's concern is if he doesn't go and meet with Olivia, that, you know, he's not going to get to see his brother again. He thinks it's going to be more difficult for them to have time together. And I just think this whole situation stinks. But at this point, Ethan says he's really tired of all this nonsense, and he just hopes one day they can all have some sort of relationship. He really wants them to come together, Kim included, and put the past behind them. So while they're driving, there ends up being a phone call from Mariah to Micah. I think he doesn't answer, but then he calls her back right away. And Micah says he knew from the way Mariah was talking that she was going to want to speak to Ethan. So he puts the phone on speaker, and it gets a little bit awkward. Now, they do a lot of talking back and forth and sometimes over each other. It's a little bit chaotic. You know, it's a chaotic conversation. There actually is a confessional in this part of the show where Ethan explains a little bit more about what his problem with Mariah is. And he says that the last time they spoke, before she ever blocked him, Mariah had accused him of yelling at her, and he felt like she was being very dramatic and actually being a bit dishonest. He says that, you know, he's upset with her for a reason. And he tells her that on the phone, like, I'm upset with you for a reason. I want an apology. And she's like, I'm not apologizing to you. I don't apologize if I don't mean it. So it's not actually going well. And then there's a part where they're talking about money, and Mariah kind of brings up something about like getting an oil change. Like, you would take my car and get the oil changed. I didn't have the money to pay you for that. And Ethan's like, that's not even what this is about. We did that because we cared about you. So I think there is some confusion about what the issue is between them. But it doesn't seem like it's not a conversation that's improving things. But what was interesting is they get to the part where they talk about the music. And it ends up being, it sounds like Ethan was right in the last episode where he says, you know, Mariah was being dramatic. That wasn't what happened. Olivia wasn't withholding her music. And it really sounds like that is what happened. I'm going to put a clip in here of Mariah admitting that her behavior about that, you know, wasn't good, and she actually regrets it now.
So the songs were in my account. I do not remember them being put in her account. And I realized I had zero access. Honestly, I freaked out and I overreacted, and I'm sorry.
So right there you hear it. She admits that she overreacted. It sounds like it was a misunderstanding. But like, why wouldn't she call at some point and apologize about that earlier? That was a huge part of them not speaking. That was a huge part of it. Even though they focus on the Kim part, that was sort of like the beginning of them not getting along. But it does clear things up for us as viewers. I feel like Olivia was telling the truth. But then the credit card issue is brought up, and Ethan is adamant that Olivia is telling the truth, and that leads to them arguing again. So like, they have a moment where they're coming together for the music, then they just go right back apart. I do think it's interesting that Mariah is sticking up for Kim so much when Ethan is telling her, like, this is what happened. And my thing is, if Ethan is willing to put it in the past and try to work on something with Kim, then, like, I feel like they should all be putting this issue in the past as well. Like, I think allow Kim and Ethan to decide what is happening with that. I just don't understand why Mariah is so invested in sticking up for Kim in this situation when it sounds like there was some real truth behind it. But that is when the whole conversation just goes south. And at this point, Ethan and Micah are pulled off the road. They're stopping to get breakfast, and he just hops out of the truck, and Micah is still on the phone with Mariah. So the conversation did not end well. So from there, they end up getting breakfast, and the next time we see him, they're back on the road. And now Micah gets another text from Olivia. She wants to talk to him one-on-one. So she wants, when he gets there, to meet with him one-on-one. I bet when Micah read that, there was a feeling of dread. Like, I bet he was like, no, because that's how I would have felt. Like, I don't want to do this. But, you know, and he says he doesn't want to do it. He's like, I don't want to talk to her alone. He says he's only there for one day before he has to leave, and he just would love to hang out with Ethan and her if she would like to come, but no one-on-one talks. I don't think he is there to get into something serious. I think he wants this to be a nice visit with his family, and then he's leaving. So Micah sends a text explaining that to Olivia. So he sends this text with Ethan's permission. He tells Ethan, I don't want to do this. I don't want to talk to her one-on-one. Ethan says, okay. But then the show switches over to Olivia's apartment, and we see her on the phone with Lydia Grace, her sister. And she tells Lydia Grace about the text that Micah sent. And Olivia just isn't on board with that. She doesn't want to hang out with Micah. And she explains that here.
I'm not down to just hang out and drink with people who for the past year have not wanted a relationship with me or treated me in a way.
I see Olivia's point. I absolutely understand. I don't think I would want to do it either. I definitely wouldn't want them coming and just sitting in my house. But on the other side of this, I think if she is going to sit down with one of these people in this family, Micah is the one to sit down with. He is very, very reasonable. As a matter of fact, when I was watching this episode, I was thinking, this is the voice of reason in this family. He's very sensible. I think sitting down with him is her best bet if it's going to be anyone in that family. I don't think it's going to turn out well with Mariah. I don't think Lydia is that involved in this. I don't think Olivia is ready to sit down with Kim and Barry. I think Micah is the link into the family and the most practical one in this family. So this is her best bet, is to actually try to, cooperate with him. But it doesn't seem like Olivia is wanting to do that. And my thing is, I think Ethan is so happy seeing his family. There's no going back from that now. So I think this is going to be a turning point for these two. When there is a part of this when Olivia is talking about them, she talks about how close she was to Micah and how it really felt like they just flipped a switch and went out of her life. So, there's a lot of hurt there. So I do understand where Olivia is coming from. But that is it for this episode. You guys let me know what you thought. I don't always respond to all the comments because I can't always do it. I do have another job and other stuff I do. So I don't always respond to all of them, but I do read them. So if you want to leave comments about this show, please do so. And if you haven't already and want to, go ahead and click like and subscribe.